Okay, so what's this video about? Okay, so today is the 31st of December 2023. Okay, this is important because going into 2024, it has been hinted at, it has been all but confirmed that Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the game of fantasy rank and flank armies, massed army combat in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, is finally coming back. And if I don't make this video now, once that returns, it can't be made because we will be living in a post-return world. So what do I mean by that? So as everyone knows, the story goes, 2014, Games Workshop ended the Warhammer Fantasy line and they introduced the Age of Sigmar line to replace it. They ended something insane like 30, 40 years worth of wargaming history. One of the first fantasy wargames that ever existed. They shot it dead and replaced it with Age of Sigmar. And then for 10 years, it remained dormant until around 5 years ago, so sort of around 2019, 2018, 2017, when they said, okay, it's going to come back. We're going to re-release Warhammer Fantasy. We've heard what everyone said. We're still keeping Age of Sigmar, but we're going to go back to the old world and we're going to refresh that game completely. So from 2014 until 2024, there has been no Warhammer Fantasy, okay? It has been 40k, Age of Sigmar, Lord of the Rings. Last year brought us back the Horus Heresy properly. So, yeah, this is a game that has been dead for a decade, and now it's coming back. It's being given support by Games Workshop. This video does not pretend to know what's going to happen in 6 months' time or a year's time or 5 years' time. What this video is about me going through a stack of old white dwarves that I've got to decide what am I keeping and what am I getting rid of, because I don't need all of these. And we're going to do something that a lot of people either can't do, or they forgot to do, or they won't do because they choose not to. We're going to talk about Warhammer Fantasy, the game that was, and Games Workshop, the company that was. Okay? So I think this issue from September 2010, this is quite a good place to start, because when the Island of Blood set launched, with the massive Skaven and High Elf forces in it, it was the launch of Warhammer Fantasy's 8th edition in 2010. Okay, so 74 miniatures, 2 forces that were very easy to assemble, to be fair. Really good straight out of the box, and they did the business. And ultimately, this was, when I was at university, this was my proper sort of introduction to Warhammer Fantasy as a game that I would play on a regular basis, right? So up until this point, I had sort of dabbled in Warhammer Fantasy. It was only really going into 2010, 2011, 2012 that I would start playing it religiously, right? I would be going down to my local Games Workshop on a weekend, every week for months and months, and we played Warhammer Fantasy, okay? We played the game of ranked, massed army battles, right? And it was, there's Jervis Johnson, it was a sight to behold. I mean, we talk about model counts. This was the thing. Back in the day, it was big armies. It was units of 40 clan rats or 50 or 100 slaves, okay? And that was the done thing. This was the grown-up game for mature war gamers to enjoy, okay? There were no flashy kind of like, oh, this one special character, he can just like kill the whole army by himself, except for the wizards. But the wizards could also kill themselves by casting spells like that, right? So it was a high skill, high barrier to entry game. And honestly, I loved it. I fell in love with it. I loved it more than I did Warhammer 40k, and I sure as hell loved it more than any of the other games that were sort of around at the time, because keep in mind, pre-2015 Games Workshop, there was no Necromunda, there was no Epic Armageddon, there was nothing, right? You had the Fantasy Flight card game for a few years before that got cancelled, and then you had the very occasional release of the Space Hulk board game, right? That was it. Games Workshop pre-2015 was Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, Lord of the Rings, and that was it. Nothing else, okay? So a whole different world. But the reality is, having 3 games, they sunk all of their creative talent into those 3 games. And honestly, like, from the creative articles to, you know, just the people get all weak-kneed over Forge World displays now. Can you imagine the scope of what Games Workshop was able to do back in the day? It's absurd. But, you know, you were living in a time when Warhammer Fantasy was a supported thing. And big armies were the norm. Okay, maybe not to this scale. You know, this is the display stuff that they sell. But I loved it. I loved Warhammer Fantasy, and I still love it to this day. I'm going to skip over the 40k stuff because it's of no interest. And the Lord of the Rings, it's of no interest. Here you go, Sigvald the Magnificent before he had his glow up. This is the thing. It's the first time I took a game seriously. It was the first time I played a 2,000 point game and really went all out. You know, I had 2 Grey Seers in a 2,000 point list, and that was, you know, heavy duty stuff, because I had access to all the Skaven spells. But, you know, it's painting articles. This is the thing. People talk about Games Workshop painting articles. They've been doing the same painting articles for about 40 years. Very little has changed. But yeah, I think out of all of them, I'll probably keep, yeah, because then it's just pages and pages of stores, isn't it? And what's coming next? Next month we're going to do a review on the High Elves. Whoa! Yeah, I'll keep on the left and sell on the right. So that was September. Let's go back in time, August 2010. But that was the thing, you know, I live in a time right now, in 2023, where for the longest time, people wouldn't stop talking about how Warhammer Fantasy was dead and everyone should just get over it, which, you know, like a lot of people, I just didn't. Oh, hey, there you go. Remember the familiars? 8 familiars, £8. There you go. That's how much they used to cost. What we got? We got the different magic cards for all the Demons of Chaos. £4. That's how much it used to cost, if there was any question as to what it used to cost. But let's not say that they were always great for their costing. Here's, you know, one of each space, you know, Chaos Space Marine Legion. £20 for 4 models. Wow, what a bargain. Well, they got an extract from Nemesis. Forge World, when they used to have things happen. Okay, let's do that. Whoa. Yeah, I currently live in a time when Warhammer Fantasy doesn't exist. It's, you know, currently does not happen. It's coming back. It's going to happen. They could delay it another 3 years. I don't know. I've lived the last 10 years, well, 9 years, with them saying it's coming back, but until it actually does, I'm not going to know for sure. But this is the thing. At the end of the day, oh man, like the old John Blanche art and is this just a Realms of Chaos? Yeah, so just an article on the Realms of Chaos, right? And then just multi-page spread of original John Blanche art. Like, man. An entire article on the magic of the old world, understanding the different schools of magic from amber to gold to celestial, jade, light, which then corresponds with the elements, because you have life and death and fire and, yeah. Ooh, is this a last battle report in 7? 7th before changing over. Hey, look, it's Matt Ward. Does anyone remember him? Going up against Dark Elves. I actually have that Hydra. That Hydra bolt thrower. I've not got the Spearmen. I have them all made up as crossbowmen instead. So, to be honest, the only thing I don't have there, I think, are some of the characters. Because I have the Cold One Knights. Yeah, the Witches. I don't have the old Witches, but I've got everything else. Had it very kindly gifted to me. So, that was a lovely birthday present one year. But this is the thing, when we talk about the return of war. Don Murray writes a journal of the campaign exploits of his general Otto von Stroheim, and it's written from the perspective of the general. Mate, people don't do that. And that's the thing, we lost so much when they decided to end the game. Because I know it had its problems. I've never denied the fact that Warhammer Fantasy wasn't a perfect game. It had so many flaws. It had all sorts of things wrong with it. People desperately wanted an updated version of Warhammer Fantasy, a 9th edition, as it were. But the reality is that ultimately, we know how the Games Workshop system works. We know that it goes models, then lore, then gameplay, in that order. Okay, so the reason why your models don't work as well as they do is because ultimately what they care about is the miniatures and selling the miniatures. The lore then exists to justify the miniatures being in the universe and can be written up into the story, like the Empire's Demigryph Knights. Like, oh, they just found them in a forest one day and they've always been there. Like, okay, that's fine. And then the rules, they create the rules last to sort of go, right, well, this is what it does. You know, and they've always been very open and honest about that. But this is like a new army book. Cost £15 in 2010. Like, this is the thing when we talk about when we talk about the price of models. A box of 10 gauze was £15, okay? A box of 10 ungors was £15, okay? A box of 10 bestigors, who are like the heavy version. I want to say, are these plastic or are they metal or resin? No, they're plastic. Was £25. A box of Minotaurs was £27. Like, this is the best thing about going back in time. You can see what the price of things actually were. Like, can you imagine buying a Space Marine Sergeant for £8? Like, come on. And now it's potentially coming back. So one of my biggest sort of hopes for the new game, for demons to use armor saves like every other faction. That was one of the most irritating things about demons in Warhammer Fantasy. They had ward saves, the equivalent of the invulnerable save in 40k. And the problem there was the fact that ultimately, in a game where there's an entire strength-based mechanic on lowering your opponent's armor save so it's easier to kill them, demons just ignored that completely. You know how people get upset at like Khorne and World Eater players for like skipping the shooting phase and the psychic phase of 40k games and Horus Heresy games? Yeah, it was exactly that for demons. Like, oh great, you've got a force that just like ignores an entire mechanic of this game. Great, thanks. Like, just... But this is the thing. One of my hopes. I hope the game is relatively balanced. I hope that ultimately, the game comes out and that it's loved. I hope that people care about it. I hope that it creates its own tournament scene again. I hope that people give a damn about it enough to get their armies out of retirement, not just for YouTube videos, but to actually, you know, enjoy playing Warhammer Fantasy again. Maybe even go back and revisit some there's some previous versions of Warhammer Fantasy. When's this one from? March 2010. Yeah, basically I hope the community comes back. Well, not all of it. I know some of it can't. Some of it's actually passed away from old age and COVID and heart attacks and you name it, but my honest hope is that the game has life breathed into it. Hey, Mega Gargant players, do you remember when your giants cost 25 quid? I can't remember how much they cost. I've never bought one, but this is the thing. Who doesn't miss it, you know? Who doesn't miss a system that they played for years and loved? Who wouldn't want it to come back and come back better than ever? And come back improved, stronger than it ever was. I mean, you know, they have talented, incredibly talented people at Games Workshop, and we've seen. Oh, sorry, February 2012, and we've seen that. To be fair, we've seen that in the previews, the models. The armies, don't get me wrong, they're getting a lot of this stuff out of cold storage, because never forget, if we are all collectors, Games Workshop has the biggest collection. Man, remember the Watchtower terrain they made? How cool that stuff was. They put special rules in with the scenarios. People would get their armies showcased. And this was all really before, like, oh, that was the 25-year anniversary edition. Oh yeah, and they were doing the anniversary. I want to say Pedro Cantor, but it's not. It's literally just the guy off the front, but holding a plasma pistol instead of the fist-mounted whatever. He cost £20. There you go. Then someone in a few years will come out and say, "Oh no, it's a Mandela effect. You're just remembering it wrong. Prices have actually always been £60 per Space Marine." It's like, oh, blow it out your ass. What's this one? December 2011. There you go. So this will be an issue on the on monsters. There you go. This will probably be a keeper. So yeah, hope is for the community to come back. Who's the editor? Andrew Kendrick. I wasn't even planning on looking at the cost of things. There you go. Look, it's all the releases from Fantasy Flight. Remember when Blood Bowl was a card game? No, you don't. No one does. Hey, there you go. I bought this. The Skaven Army, right? 130 quid. I bought that. I have a photo of me holding that because I was proud. And they did at the time a High Elf army, 130 quid. So what it came with, 40 Clan Rats, 40 Storm Vermin, 20 Plague Monks, 2 Rat Ogres. 2? Oh yeah, because it was the frame, wasn't it? 6 Giant Rats, yeah. 3 Packmasters, a Warp Lightning Cannon and a Screaming Bell. Warp Lightning Cannon, Screaming Bell, Storm Vermin, Clan Rats. Those were all new kits as well, so it was a good deal. I tell you, I kid you not, it was good, and I loved it. An interview with someone who wrote books. What we got? Denizens of the Deep Forest, of the Forest Depths, the Jabba Slythe and the Cygor, and a series on army composition. So talking about strategic depth and units and how to trick your enemy into overexerting themselves. Vulnerable units. Standard bearer article. Like people converting multiple Tau kits to make something that looks like a Gundam, but it's not a Gundam, it's just really well done. Or that Orc battle wagon with just a Predator turret stuck to it. Well, this is... I think we're actually hitting the limit, so I'm just going to wrap this up. And just on the belief that, you know, it's probably going to go. So, yeah, ultimately, Warhammer Fantasy, I'm glad it's coming back. It's a staggering trip down memory lane looking to a whole section on house rules, but it's about terrain. It's a massive, staggering trip down memory lane looking at all of this stuff. But ultimately, You know, what do we want? We want to see it come back, and we want to see it be popular, and we want to see it work, and there's no reason to think it won't. So long as Games Workshop don't half-arse the release, and I don't think they will. I think they're actually going to care about it. I mean, I'm planning on digging out all my Warhammer Fantasy models. I've got a full Skaven army and a Dark Elf army, so that'll be good fun. Yeah. Whole new world. Well, the old world, as it were. Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. Thank you all for watching, boys and girls, and I will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye. This is how amazing my camera is. It can record detail in video.
Yeah, I reckon
So I figured she looked like she was sort of flying, I guess it's over there.
Hang on, can I get the other one? Is that one of the original Banshees? It looks like it.
Yeah.
Oh, so what's it?
Good and heavy, that's what I like. Red.
Well,
There's something about playing with nicely painted miniatures, it just feels good, which makes me incredibly jealous because I know all my stuff needs to be finished. I'm like,
That's it. I hate painting, but I would love to actually have a painted army, and that's why I keep doing it every week down here. 4 hours.
Can I pick up the, what is it, the Jabberwock or whatever it's called?
Jabba Slice. That's the other part of the carrier.
Did you buy online for the Beast of Nurgle parts, or?
No, I just came on board and so I just started there and then.
So it's nice.
Yeah, he's got one.
Are you videoing it or?
Yeah, in